I go down and I'm going over to the Navy recruiter office, and they kind of like, take some pamphlets. And so I took the pamphlets, and there was one about NROTC, and at the bottom of the NROTC one was, be sure to talk to your Marine Corps recruiter about whatever. And so I was like, oh, okay, well, I'll go over there and, I'll see what kind of pamphlets they have, because I don't know what the heck I'm doing. I just was feeling patriotic. And I remember it was I won't say his name, but there was a staff sergeant in there, and he's like, so what can I do for you? And I was like, I'm just, looking at stuff. I'm thinking about serving. And he just flat out goes, well, that's cool, but do you want to be the best? And I was like, well, yeah. So
what kind of question is that?
yeah. But I ended up choosing infantry. Everything else just really kind of sounded boring. I was like, well, it's just, I wanted to be on the front lines. I thought that was the point of everything. And so, graduated 3 months later, I was at boot camp, School of Infantry, became a machine gunner there.
Now in high school, like leading up to that, did they go after the guys when they, I mean, I'm sure that they spot people and have some tactics, these recruiters, but were you playing any high school sports or anything at that point? And
yeah, I ended up being the captain of my football team and wrestling team, one of the captains on each team. So I was a decent football player. I was a really good wrestler. I was on my way to wrestling in college, but I couldn't see myself going to college. And, my dad was irritated when he found out, I threw away some paperwork from a college that came in, because I'd already enlisted before my senior year of high school.
Mm. Okay. So you knew what you were getting into.
Well, I didn't know what I was getting into, but I knew where I was going.
But with a sought out mindset, like, I want to be in the infantry. I want to be on the front lines.
Right. And it all came from kind of this, this is what's going on in my generation, and I'm not going to be one of the guys that's like, I couldn't see myself wanting or to stay home when I knew there were other guys my age going over and doing their part. Mm-hmm. So a lot of it was that.
That's the most patriotic time in American history that I can remember since I've been alive.
Yeah, in most recent times for sure.
Yeah.
Just seeing, and to that point, there's a lot of guys I served with who probably wouldn't have enlisted, but they did because they saw what was going on. And it's all these it's a really great mix of people, really, really smart, kind of dumb.
Well, I think just even diversity, whether you lived in the inner city of New York or you were in the middle of Iowa someplace, you know what I mean? That's kind of what it brought. It brought us together as a country more than anything, I think.
Yeah, I met my first Jewish guy. I met my first Alaskan. All these people I would have never met.
That's super
that
cool.
I'm still friends with to this day.
That's incredible. So after you enlist, you graduate high school, what was the process like going to boot camp? Did you end up on the East Coast or?
No, ended up going to Pendleton.
Okay. And what was that experience like?
So I had a football coach from when I was in junior high. He was actually a Marine Corps drill instructor. So when he found out that I was going, because I played sports with his son, he just kind of let me know. The advice he gave me is look, these are just guys with a job. They're there to mess with you. Just think of it as kind of funny. And I went in there with that thought. I was like, oh, this is kind of funny. And the stuff they would do to you. And there was one time where they were trying to kind of make a point. And for whatever reason, I was hyper that night. And because we were up north, it's a little bit different now, but at the time we were at what was called up north, which is where you would go up from MCRD up to Camp Pendleton to do your rifle range training. And so we were up there, and somebody had done something stupid, who knows, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, get outside and we're going to take you out. And they're just basically making you do push-ups and hazing you and stuff. But I was like, yeah, I could use a workout right now. And so we go out, I'm just kind of losing my mind. And they go in and all right, the next 10. And I'm standing right behind that drill instructor. And I'm like, this recruit's ready again, sir. And he's just what the fuck? And so I just kept going out because I was having fun. Because I took my mind out of the oh man, they're not letting us sleep. It's no, who cares?
Right.
But, boot camp compared to everything else that happens in a 4-year enlistment, boot camp was a relatively easy part of it.
And how much of this applies to what you do now? Like, I feel like a lot of the guys that I've talked to or that I've had in here that find some sort of purpose post-military, especially if they've been on deployments and that sort of thing, it just seems like they're successful at whatever they try. And it's kind of like, I think no matter what sort of business you have these grandeur ideas when you start it that, oh, I'm going to make all this money. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And then the first hurdle comes up and then the second one and then the third. And then it just keeps, you're just constantly hurdling, right? You're hurdling stuff and adapting and overcoming. And I feel like that mindset a little bit is kind of ingrained in those military guys not to give up. And
I'd say that's probably our main superpower in the world of business is just, especially with startups, e-commerce, like things that are kind of relatively low hurdles to get into. But I've got friends who are weapons engineers. I've got friends who are satellite engineers. Incredibly smart people, and they just don't give up. We don't like the people who are successful, carte blanche, doesn't matter if you're veteran or not. The people who are successful are the people who don't give up. You get punched in the face, you keep going. You get kicked in the groin, you keep going. Like, just get back up and keep going. I mean, I've failed at so many businesses in the last 10 years that they're not worth talking about.